All right, YouTube. So the final Capcom Cup qualifiers have been decided for the CPT 9, Capcom Cup 9 2022-2023 season, I suppose you could call it. It is done. It is decided. We have all 45 players currently qualified besides the final spot that will go to the LCQ. And with that, we can go ahead and tally up the representation of the characters that have made it into Capcom Cup. So I went ahead and made this little tier list here to chart who is in the Capcom Cup and who isn't. I organized it by number of representatives in the Capcom Cup, and I pretty much just did it by their main. And it's a pretty good spread of characters. You know, there's a decent number of characters with no representation. Down here, hidden by my webcam, we have Armika. For this format for this year, it is done regionally. So each region gets 2 qualifiers, one through the CPT qualifier and one through the World Warrior qualifier. So a lot of people were kind of questioning this format, arguing, oh, it's not giving the best representation for Capcom Cup because, you know, some regions are stronger than others, right? Japan only has 2 qualifiers through their region, and Kawano is the third by winning EVO. So you kind of get a weird mix of characters because some regions are, you know, less popular, not as many known players. And so that might allow some strange characters to get through. We have 2 Fongs in Capcom Cup, 3 Birdies, which people would not usually expect to see in Capcom Cup. Yeah, even Ryu, you know, Jimmy in Germany qualified with Ryu. So we got an interesting spread of characters, but you might be missing a familiar face in all this. But don't worry. All you have to do is scroll up a little bit more, almost there, and there we have it. We have 10 Lukes qualified for Capcom Cup, and I guess that's the big talking point. Luke has taken over the final season of Street Fighter V, and I don't think this is too many people's surprise. I definitely called this. Luke dropped, and he was obviously, to me, in my opinion, the #1 character in Street Fighter V at the time. And it stayed that way. They slightly nerfed him in an emergency balance update, added some recovery to a couple of his normals, but he's just so strong. You know, he plays a really solid fundamental game of footsies, has great buttons, amazing confirms, great crush counters, great low forward confirm, amazing throw game, amazing DP. It gets great Oki from everything. It does way too much damage with every hit. He's just a better version of an all-around character, right? He's just, he has it all. He's not really too strange of an archetype. He's just basically a Shoto on steroids, and it shows. So a lot of people switch to Luke because he rewards strong Street Fighter and Street Fighter V fundamentals and does it in less interactions. He basically just kills in less hits. So it kind of makes sense that a lot of people went ahead and switched on over to this character. I took these results by looking at the Capcom Cup qualified players here, and I had to make some adjustments when going through this because a couple of these players, it doesn't even show how many Lukes there really are in Capcom Cup. People like Chris CCH were put as Sakura. Chris is definitely all in on Luke. Big Bird as well. He qualified with Luke as well. So I had to make some adjustments to the characters shown here to really show off just how many Lukes made it into Capcom Cup. It's a little sad to see, I would say. I think there's been a big discussion about how the end game meta is boring, a lot more streamlined, repetitive, because we see a ton of Luke mirrors. And when I'm looking at this, the big thing to take away here to me is that a lot of these Luke players are not just like the less known representatives. It's a lot of your favorites, right? It's Punk, it's NL, it's Mena, it's a lot of Phenom. I expect him to do really well. It's a lot of players that have been doing well in Street Fighter V for years who are on the Luke bandwagon because it's the thing to do to stay up to date with the competition. So I do expect to see a decent amount of Luke action in this Capcom Cup, but it's not impossible for someone playing not Luke to go far. It's possible for someone to make some upsets. You know, people like Angerbird have been playing really hot recently, and he's been rocking mostly Ken, and I think Ken has a pretty decent matchup against Luke as well. Kawano is still in the mix with Colleen, so he has a good shot of going far. Momochi's there with Cody. Cody is extremely strong right now in this season, just doesn't have as many players that qualified, which is surprising as well. I think Cody, Poison, these are easily top 3, top 5 characters. Dhalsim as well. We only have 2 Dhalsim players. So Dhalsim is definitely top 5 in my opinion as well, but we just don't see as much representation. If I had to pick a top 5 right now, I'd probably say Luke, Cody, Poison, Sim, and Ken. those are like the characters I would put in the top 5, not necessarily in order, except for Luke number 1 in my opinion. Maybe Dhalsim up there too. We'll see how it all shakes up come the Capcom Cup. But the big thing to me is how this does naturally happen in a lot of competitive games, where we do tend to see the meta kind of what was the word I'm looking for? Hold on. It doesn't coagulate. It concentrates. It converge. Jeez. Thanks, chat, for being my dictionary. Converge. So it is pretty expected that the meta at the end of a game's lifespan, once it's been figured out, tends to converge in on the top tier representatives. It's just different because Luke was kind of dropped in the final DLC and obviously made a little artificially enhanced. You know, we might want to do a little test, get some blood work done, because Luke dropped, in my opinion, enhanced specifically for the purposes of ensuring that he wasn't a flop DLC, because he is the poster child of Street Fighter 6. He is the character you need to recognize for the brand. So they wanted the community to pick him up, use him, get the viewers accustomed to him. So that's my tinfoil hat theory with Luke. Generally, I don't feel like developers are too inclined to artificially create top tier characters for the purpose of selling DLC. But I think with Luke, it definitely feels like that was the purpose of him. So the meta's converging. People have figured out the game quick. I think if Luke dropped just as strong in earlier seasons, not as many people would have switched to him. But because we know how the game plays so well at this point, and it's the final season, people are very much inclined to just quickly switch to a strong all-around character to get the most out of him. So I think he dropped at a time where we figured the game out and people are just doing what it takes to win, and Luke is definitely the answer that we see. So in a lot of games without this kind of DLC towards the end of the lifespan, you tend to also see the meta converging on the top tier characters. Like, it usually happens, but there's a lot of discussion going around in the community about that, how it's not fun to see, because generally with fighting games, a big part of the fun and playing and spectating is seeing a variety of characters, a variety of play styles, so that when you tune into a tournament, you're not just seeing Luke versus Luke. So we even saw assaults from people like Idom, who very rarely salt tweets complaining about how Luke is taking over the meta. It's so rare to see that I was shocked to see Idom dropping these bombs. As a fighting game competitor, I understand the pick a top tier mindset and picking whatever ensures your victory, but as a fighting game spectator and someone who just enjoys the genre, fighting games are at their peak when players are winning with different characters and strats. And I forget the exact timeline, but I'm pretty sure this was posted soon after the CPT NA East. So in this event, Idom went to losers early before top 8 by losing to Kami's Luke 2-1, and then he lost to Punk's Luke. So this was before top 16, actually, right? I think he didn't even make top 8. So this was during top 16 for him to qualify for top 8, losing to Punk and Kami's Luke's, and he dropped a little bit of a salt tweet here. Speaking some facts to some people's opinions, I agree to an extent. It does bode poorly for the viewability for a game when it's a ton of mirror matches, especially for a game like Street Fighter V, where I feel like Street Fighter V is not the flashiest game. If it's something like a Marvel versus Capcom, MVC 2, for example, had tons of mirror matches. MVC 3 as well. You had tons of mirror matches as well in that game, but the mirror matches involve high octane gameplay, a lot of movement, and the game itself is always a spectacle. Street Fighter V is definitely a slower paced game, so generally the viewability comes from the difference in approaches between the characters and players, and you kind of lose that when it's all Luke. I still enjoy high level Luke mirrors when it comes down to it, right? There's still tension there for sure. It just does kill some of the variety, I think, as well. It is what it is. People are kind of feeling the brunt of the Luke meta, and yeah, it's not the greatest setup for Capcom Cup. However, I still think in Capcom Cup, I think we're gonna have variety. Even though there's 10 Lukes here, we're gonna have. I hope I don't regret saying this. My prediction. Let me know in the chat or the comments what you think. How many Lukes are gonna make top 8? This would be a fun bet to make, right? While you're watching Capcom Cup, how many Lukes will make top 8 at Capcom Cup? I'm saying 2 max. I think 2 Lukes max. I think we might see a bunch in top 16, but they're going to have to start eliminating each other for sure. But there is definitely a world where there is little to no Luke, right? Like imagine a top 8 where we're going to have like a Mr. Crimson, an Angry Bird, Valmaster, a Ending Walker, Kawano, Idom. I'm running out of top tier representatives. Momochi and Pugera. Right? There is a world where no Lukes make top 8. It's possible. But there is also a world where we have all 8 Lukes in top 8. I hope there's no more than 2 Lukes in top 8. Not for me personally, for people who are more casual fans who tune in here and there. I think they really need variety. You need something that's immediately visceral and immediately recognizable and something to latch onto right away. So someone tuning into Capcom Cup for the first time, seeing Street Fighter V for the first time for Capcom Cup 9, they can see something like a G and be like, okay, that's cool. I like G versus Luke, right? Or they can see Seth, Fong, whatever, like characters that have a very unique identity. They can immediately latch onto that and root for that player playing that character. So we kind of lose that immediate attachment to people who aren't as invested when everyone plays the same character. Because we're not even going to be able to tell who's who. You know, I have trouble sometimes telling who's who in a Luke mirror. I see a random clip of a Luke mirror and I start looking at it. I'm like, who's who? Like I have to like look at the life bars and pay attention to the interactions. And I can see when chip damage or a hit occurs. I see whose life bar depletes. It takes me, someone who's been playing fighting games for over 10 years, it takes me mental power to recognize who is playing what character. That is not good. That is a problem for the passerby, for the casual viewer, to attach to the players, the characters, and the storyline and get involved with the story. So I think that's definitely not a good thing. That's a big problem when you have constant mirror matches, I think. I'll be enjoying the show either way. Capcom Cup 9 is going to be big. The LCQ is going to be huge. It might be, in some people's opinions, it's more stacked and more entertaining potentially than the actual Capcom Cup, considering how many strong players, especially from Japan, did not qualify for the Capcom Cup and all have to battle it out in the LCQ. It's definitely going to be a big event. So Luke or not, I'll be tuning in person most likely, and I'll be enjoying the show. For people who play multiple characters, you got to split it up. Big Bird mains Luke, Ken, Rashid, so he counts as 0.33 Luke main instead of 1 Luke main. This is that pro Luke propaganda from Phenom. Don't let people like Phenom try to pull this psyop to make you think that Luke is just not a top tier character. There's been this whole push on Twitter to like rewrite history and sweep under the rug how busted that Luke is. Oh, he relies on solid Street Fighter fundamentals to win. I don't care what fundamentals he uses. If your fundamentals are hopped up on that many androgynous hormones and steroids, it's not fair. Like this Luke is just super powered. This dude is not human. He's left humanity behind, okay? You think those forearms are natty? He is sauce to the gills, bro. Sure, you know how to do a DP and anti-air, but when your DP does about 33% damage and your fireball is a laser beam that goes full screen, then maybe the character is a little overtuned. Just a tiny bit overtuned.